Now we're going to learn how to graph an inequality, and finally we'll see how to solve an inequality. So when you graph an inequality, the most important thing to remember is that there's lots and lots of different values that make an inequality true. So thinking about our statement here, we have y is less than 3. There are tons of numbers that are less than 3. So when we graph an inequality on a number line, it's a visual representation of all of the possible values that make our inequality true. So I like to start by taking the solution and putting it in the middle, one value off to the right and one value off to the left to finish off the number line. If the inequality is simply greater than or less than, as our example, we use an open circle because 3 does not make the inequality true. If you think about substituting 3 into the inequality for y, 3 is not less than 3, so 3 is not a solution, which is why we have an open circle there. Y is less than 3, so anything smaller than 3 or less than shades to the left will make the inequality true. The second part of our example is to list 3 values that will make the inequality true. Well, there's the obvious value that if y equals 2, we substitute that in, 2 is less than 3. Other values that will work if y, for example, is -1. -1 is less than 3 is a true statement. And we could say y is -1,682 because -1,682 is less than 3. One more example of graphing and then we'll move on to solving. Again, I like to put my solution in the middle. One value higher, be careful when you're on the negative side. It looks smaller, but -4 is bigger than -5. And then one value smaller, which would be -6. And then we're going to list 3 values that make it true. When the variable is on the right side of the inequality, there's 2 things. One, you have to read it backwards, which isn't always that easy. So the other option is to flip it around. Now make sure when you flip the inequality, you flip everything, including the inequality symbol. So our original inequality says -5 is less than or equal to x. And when we flipped it around, it says x is greater than or equal to -5. Both of those statements mean the exact same thing. So now getting this graphed, it's much easier to graph if you flip it around where x is on the left-hand side. We have a closed circle this time. What that means is that -5 is a solution to the inequality. So if we put -5 in for x, we get a statement that is true. -5 is greater than or equal to -5. And then greater than will shade off to the right. Those are the values that are bigger than, in this case, -5. So 2 other values that will make this true. If x equals 0, 0 is greater than or equal to -5. And if x is 176, that is greater than or equal to -5. So again, the 3 values I have that I'm listing to make the inequality true are these that I substituted in for x. Finally, let's take a look at solving. Again, solving an inequality is almost exactly the same as solving an equation. You just have to be careful for the second step over here. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you need to flip that inequality symbol. So our example here, to solve for r, I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides of my inequality. So I get 10 is greater than -2r. So here we go, dividing by a negative. So I'm going to, first of all, divide 10 divided by -2. Then I will flip the inequality, and I have r for my solution. Now because it's easier to graph with the variable on the left-hand side, I'm going to flip everything again and say instead of -5 is less than r, I have r is greater than -5. Getting this on my number line, -5 in the middle, one value bigger, one value smaller. This time we have an open circle because r is simply greater than, so -5 is not a solution, and greater than goes off to the right. Last example, solving for g this time. Going to subtract 3 from both sides. -37 minus 3 is -40, greater than or equal to 4g. This time I'm dividing by a positive 4, so I do not flip the inequality symbol. -10 is greater than or equal to g. Flipping this around so that I can graph it and flipping that inequality symbol as well. I have g is less than or equal to -10. So I put -10 in the middle of my graph. One value larger, one value smaller. I have a closed circle on this one because we have or equal to, so -10 is a solution. And g is less than, so I shade off to the left. 2 U-Try questions for you.